The Queen's Wrath. Queen Zea sat upon her jagged throne of molten obsidian, eyes burning with contempt as the footage played one last time. There, across the floating screen, was the image that had sent her palace into frenzy, a single human wearing a soot-stained jacket and a pair of broken goggles, calmly walking out of a wrecked Dominion dreadnought, clutching a fusion coil that should have been unremovable. The detonation that followed was surgical, precise, and humbling. 3 of her finest flagships were left floating carcasses in the void because one mechanic, a human mechanic, had outsmarted the Dominion's elite engineers. His name meant nothing to her. Not yet. But his face, it carved itself into her pride like a blade. Corinvel, her advisor hissed, eyes wide with fear. He is not a soldier, my queen, just a scavenger from the core's debris sector. Then send a dragon to collect his bones, she said coldly. Let Nzor teach him the weight of blood. Nzor, her living calamity, slumbered beneath the palace, coiled in flame, flesh-bound with shadow-forged alloy and runes from dead languages. Created in war, fed on stars, the beast was loyalty incarnate, breathing heat that had melted colonies and howled open the gates of rebel fortresses. She summoned it now, not with desperation, but as a lesson. Nzor rose when called, its vast frame ascending from the depths with the weight of legend, claws clanking against metal, tail dragging trails of fire in its wake. Its face was a monument of fangs and scars, and its eyes bore the brand of the Queen's seal. She stood before the beast and whispered, "Burn the world if you must, but I want him." Nzor growled once, the sound a language of death. Then it turned, spread its vast wings, and vanished into the stars, seeking the one man who had dared touch her throne without permission. The mechanic and the monster. Corinvel hadn't planned to insult a galactic empress. He'd just been doing what he always did, fixing broken things. That dreadnought had been sabotaged long before he ever reached it. Power cores corroded, safety locks bypassed. All he did was remove the failing coolant module before it exploded on its own. But when a runaway system takes out 3 ships and the entire Dominion fleet blames a guy with a wrench, there's only so much explaining one can do. Now, sitting atop a crumbling war husk in a scrapyard moon called Bellinor 9, Corin wiped oil from his face and sipped cold caf from a dented thermos. He didn't hear Nzor arrive. He felt it. The wind vanished. The sky cracked. The ground trembled as the massive shape descended, heat peeling layers from the surrounding wrecks. He turned slowly, goggles slipping down over his eyes, and stared up at the thing that legends used to silence crying children. "Well," Corin muttered. "That's a hell of a delivery fee." Nzor landed with a deafening thud, wings folding, its body curling into a low, predatory crouch. Fire coiled between its jaws, runes pulsing down its neck. It growled once, deep, ancient, and hungry. Corin didn't run. He noticed the way Nzor's breath caught. A cough, a twitch, a stutter in the fire stream. Its left vent jaw was swollen. Maybe a lodged plasma gland. Corin stepped forward slowly, lifting his hands. "Yeah, you've been flying a little hot, haven't you? Let me guess, Imperial metal. Those ducts corrode after 70 cycles." The beast froze. And in that moment of hesitation, Corin climbed the wreck beside it, braced one boot against the shoulder plate, and leaned in near its snout. The dragon didn't flinch. Corin reached in with a tool and twisted once, removing a fused shard of crystallized slag from the vent. Nzor exhaled. The flame smoothed. The pain stopped. Its growl turned into a sound somewhere between confusion and relief. Then Corin stepped back, climbed onto the dragon's neck, and sat down like it was a park bench. "There," he said. "Now, where were you supposed to take me?" Nzor rose higher than towers, larger than memory, and let out a roar that shattered clouds. But it wasn't angry. And when the stars blinked again, the Queen's weapon was gone, flying through the void with a grinning human on its back and a wrench slung over one shoulder. A shock among the stars. The Dominion fleet commander, watching the forward scanners aboard the flagship Revenant's Fury, blinked twice, convinced the sensors were malfunctioning. Nzor's unmistakable signal was streaking back toward the heart of Dominion territory. But the readings showed something inexplicable. The beast known for its unyielding ferocity and strict obedience to Queen Zea was not returning alone, and certainly not victorious. He magnified the visuals on his holographic display and froze, speechless, as the footage sharpened. Nzor, the dragon beast of 1,000 battles, was calmly flying with a single human figure perched casually on its back, leaning forward as though steering a star cruiser. Commander Varel stumbled back from the console, shock tightening his throat, and turned to his subordinates, shouting for confirmation that this was not some cruel trick of optics. But every sensor, every probe, every warship tracking system corroborated the unbelievable truth. Corinvel, a simple human mechanic, had somehow tamed the galaxy's deadliest creature. Across the fleet, communication channels exploded with chatter. Disbelief spread faster than plasma fire, whispers erupting into panicked questions, frantic commands, and murmurs of mutiny. On a dozen worlds, soldiers and citizens watched in stunned silence as the transmission leaked outward, shaking their faith in the Dominion's unbreakable strength. It was not just a blow to military strategy. It was a seismic fracture in the very foundation of Queen Zea's carefully constructed empire of fear. Meanwhile, on Nzor's immense back, Corin adjusted his goggles and tapped the massive dragon's armored scales. "You've got a smoother ride than most ships I've worked on, big guy," he chuckled, almost forgetting the existential peril awaiting them. Nzor merely tilted its head slightly, rumbling in a way that Corin was beginning to recognize as amusement, or at least as close to amusement as something born from fury could manage. They swept past orbital defenses that dared not fire upon the Queen's legendary beast. The sight of Nzor flying effortlessly through defensive grids left their operators too paralyzed with uncertainty to activate weapon systems. Corin knew exactly where they were headed, straight into the mouth of Dominion power itself, toward a throne room that had never been defied. And seated on that throne, gripping its edges with claws trembling from suppressed fury, Queen Zea prepared herself not merely to confront the insolent human, but to discover how deeply she had misjudged her own creation. Defiance at the gates. The grand plaza of the Dominion Palace shimmered with the reflected light of 3 setting suns. Royal guards stood in rigid formation, their plasma lances raised in perfect symmetry as though their discipline alone could ward off the approaching calamity. Queen Zea rose from her throne, the black metal of her armor catching the dying light. Her most trusted generals flanked her, hands resting on weapons that had conquered star systems. None spoke. The distant roar of Nzor had reached them minutes ago, and with it, the unthinkable reality they now faced. "If the dragon brings the mechanic alive," she said, her voice sharp as shattered glass, "I want him before me. Unharmed." Her chief general, Calvar, turned with disbelief etched across his scarred face. "My queen, this human has somehow corrupted your most loyal." "I said unharmed," she interrupted, her eyes flashing with cold fire. "I would know how a creature bred for war and bound to my will has been turned." The palace trembled then, dust raining from ancient rafters as Nzor's massive form descended toward the central landing platform. The beast's shadow fell across the plaza like an eclipse, blotting out starlight and spreading dread through even the most battle-hardened warriors. When Nzor landed, the platform groaned beneath its weight. Steam billowed from vents along its spine, and its wings folded with precision that betrayed no sign of the feral rage that had always defined it. And there, sitting upright on its neck, was Corinvel, smudged with engine grease, goggles pushed up on his forehead, wearing an expression somewhere between amusement and wariness. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only when Corin slid down the dragon's foreleg and landed with a soft thud on the polished surface. He patted Nzor's flank, and the beast lowered its massive head, allowing the mechanic to adjust something near its jaw. "That should hold until we can properly replace the thermal regulator," Corin said to the dragon, as casually as if addressing an old colleague. Nzor huffed a gentle cloud of steam in response. Queen Zea descended the steps of her throne dais, her movements deliberate, predatory. "You," she called out, her voice carrying across the plaza, have destroyed 3 of my finest ships, evaded my justice, and corrupted my weapon. She stopped 10 paces from him. Give me one reason not to have you executed where you stand. Corin looked up, meeting her gaze without flinching. Because your dragon wasn't a weapon until you made it one, he replied, his voice clear and steady. And it's been suffering for it. Those implants you've grafted into its nervous system. They're deteriorating. The pain's been driving it mad for years. A murmur ran through the assembled court. Nzor shifted behind him, its massive head coming to rest beside Corin protectively. I fixed it, Corin continued. That's all I do. I fix broken things. He gestured to the dragon. And this magnificent creature was breaking under the weight of your control. The binding of fire and steel. Queen Zea's eyes narrowed to glittering slits. Her hand moved to the ceremonial blade at her hip, a movement so slight that only her most observant guards noticed. Yet before she could draw, Nzor's tail coiled protectively around Corin, its scales glowing with inner heat. An impressive parlor trick, she said, her voice deceptively calm. But Nzor was engineered for absolute loyalty. Its very cells are bound to my bloodline through ancient science your primitive mind couldn't begin to comprehend. Corin shrugged. Science is just another kind of machine, he replied. And machines can be fixed, or broken, depending on who's holding the wrench. From his pocket, he produced a small device, no larger than his palm. It pulsed with a faint blue light, matching the rhythm of Nzor's own bioluminescent heartbeat. This is what you implanted at the base of its brain stem. The control node. It was degrading, sending corrupt signals through its neural pathways. Causing pain. Madness. The Queen's advisors gasped. Such technology was supposed to be known only to the royal engineers. I didn't disable it, Corin continued. I repaired it. Cleaned up the signal. Nzor follows you not because it's forced to, but because it chooses to. With unexpected gentleness, the mechanic placed his hand on the dragon's massive snout. Ask it yourself. Queen Zea stood frozen, caught between rage and fascination. The court watched, breath held, as she approached the dragon that had raised worlds in her name. She placed her hand on its scales, feeling the familiar heat beneath her palm. Nzor, she commanded. Destroy him. The dragon's eyes, those ancient pools of flame, regarded her unblinking. It did not move. You see, said Corin quietly. It understands now. The pain is gone, and with it, the blind obedience. For the first time in living memory, uncertainty flickered across Queen Zea's face. What have you done? Given it a choice. Corin stroked the dragon's scales. Loyalty freely given is stronger than any forged in chains. Your engineers built Nzor to be a weapon. I showed it that it could be more. A hush fell over the court as the Queen stepped back, her hand falling away from her weapon. In that moment, the foundations of her rule, built on fear and absolute control, trembled more profoundly than if Corin had attacked her directly. The Dominion stands on the edge of collapse, she said finally, her voice low. 3 systems have declared independence this past cycle alone. Without weapons like Nzor, everything I've built will fall. Maybe, Corin replied, or maybe what you built was always going to fall because it was built wrong in the first place. He glanced around the opulent palace, taking in the fearful faces of the courtiers. Things that run too hot eventually burn out. Empires included. Queen Zea's face hardened. And you propose a solution, mechanic? I fix things, Corin said simply. Your ships. Your dragons. His eyes met hers without wavering. Perhaps even your empire, if you're willing to see that it's broken. Nzor rumbled, a sound like distant thunder, and lowered its massive head to the ground in a gesture that was neither submission nor threat, but something new, something that spoke of choice. The Queen looked from the dragon to the mechanic, and something shifted in her ancient eyes. You will stay, she declared finally. Not as prisoner, but as. She hesitated over the unfamiliar word. Advisor. Corin smiled slightly. I prefer mechanic. Your Majesty's fleet needs a lot of work. In the days that followed, whispers spread through the Dominion. Of a queen who rode with a human mechanic on the back of her dragon. Of warships transformed into vessels of exploration. Of a throne that was no longer built on fear. And on distant worlds, when children could not sleep, they no longer spoke of Nzor the Destroyer. Instead, they told stories of Nzor the Mender, who carried a queen and a mechanic among the stars, fixing what was broken. The end.